everyone. Welcome to the Self Love Project, a work of love by over 30 people. A work of love by over 30 people, which is just so incredible. So, the first thing I want to say is thank you so much to everyone who was involved in making this project a success. I would not have been able to do this without you all. So, thank you so much for just being willing and excited and happy to send me voice memos to make this come to life. My vision for the project was to bring different perspectives to the podcast on the whole concept of self-love. And we're going to go into the different aspects with each episode that will be released. So we'll talk about self-love, we'll talk about self-care, self-reflection, and self-awareness. We'll talk about self-celebration, self-improvement, boundaries, self-compassion and forgiveness, relationships with others, and how they influence self-love. I'm a firm believer in learning from others. And so even when I was creating this podcast, my goal was to create a podcast that would bring different perspectives. And so with this project, it's bringing so many different perspectives on aspects of self-love. And so my hope is that when people listen to this, they can get at least one thing, learn one new thing from somebody, or you could listen and be like, oh, this really resonates with me. Or you could listen and be like, oh, you know what? Maybe if I start doing this, that could actually help me out. So that's my hope, is that we all learn from someone out there and that we can all continue to grow. So I really hope that you guys will enjoy this project. Make sure that you share with people. I think there's just so much that can be learned from this project, and I'm so excited. So without further ado, I present to you our 6th episode in the Self-Love Project.
A lot of people struggle to say no to others. Is this something that you've struggled with? What makes or made it hard to say no? If you overcame the struggle, what helped you overcome it? How do you feel about communicating your needs and expectations to others? Do you do this often? Why or why not? I'd say I definitely struggled or used to struggle to say no to others, but I don't anymore. And I think becoming a resident assistant in RA in college helped, because that's something that many experienced RAs would share as something that they had to learn to do, like learning to say no to people. So yeah, I'd say what made it hard to say no initially was the fact that you know the person will be disappointed, and so you feel like you don't want them to be disappointed, and you say yes even if it means it's going to be more exhausting for you. But when I realized that that wasn't really helping me, and also not helping the person as well, because like when you want to say no but you say yes and then you do the thing, you are doing it against like your will / happiness, and that I feel like that also comes up, and you don't fully engage and you don't fully enjoy the activity. So I think looking at it from that side helped me say no to things. And so I started saying no to more things. And at this point, I pretty much have zero qualms or zero hesitation saying no to people. And I think it's honestly helped, because when I say yes, people know it's like my yes is truly a yes. And so when I say no, it's like, yeah, it is what it is.
To answer your question, yes, I struggle to say no to others. I think a lot of people have. And I think that's a journey that a lot of people are on, learning to say no. And it's a spectrum, Some people are at the beginning of the journey where they really struggle to say no. Some people are in the middle where they can say no sometimes, and sometimes they just can't. And some people, it's a hard no. When it's a no, it's a no. I don't care who you are, where you're from. I'm saying no if I need to. So I'm somewhere on the spectrum. But I made strides. And a part of it is age, I think, as you grow older. When you're younger, I think you struggle to say no. There's an element of leaning towards, people pleasing and being nice, overly nice. And you think by not being able to say no, you're being nice, and very considerate and putting others first, and that's being nice. But as you get older, you care less. I have to be honest. You care less about being nice to others, and you care more about being nice to yourself. I have to be honest. And when I say older, I'm not trying to make myself seem very, very old. I'm just showing the difference between being a teenager or in your 20s and being in your 30s. There's a difference in some of these things and how you relate with other people. So yes, how I've overcome it is literally wanting to be kinder to myself. And to do that, I have to say no sometimes. And understanding that that's okay. And I actually think saying no is a very good tester of relationships. Because if our relationship can survive a no, then we're good. There must be freedom for me to say no. So, 2 things. I use it to protect myself and to be kinder to myself. And number 2, I use it to test our relationship. Can our relationship survive a no? And if it can, that's a good thing. The second thing that you asked is that, am I able to communicate my expectations to others? Yes and no. It depends on safety in the relationship. Is there a safe space in the relationship enough for me to be able to communicate my needs? If there isn't, I find it difficult, for sure. And I'm still working on that because my needs haven't changed just because there's no safe space. But then it just becomes harder. If there's a safe space, then I do communicate my feelings and my needs. And yeah, so I think the safety in the relationship is a big determinant of whether I'm able to communicate my needs.
Yes, I struggle to say no 100%. And I think there's 2 reasons for this. One, I tend to want to please people or please everybody. So I'll say yes when people ask me for something because I want to be there for them. 2, I think I also have a pretty big fear of missing out, like FOMO. So I'll say yes because I want to have that experience. I don't want to miss out on a good experience. But these things can get me into trouble sometimes because either I will overwhelm myself with commitments and deplete my energy, or sometimes I'll have to end up canceling on commitments or promises that I made and kind of let people down, and that's not great either. So this is something I've begun to work on. I have not completely fixed it yet. Still working on this, but what has helped me begin to overcome this is with practice. Practice saying no more and more. And kind of started by doing it in, smaller situations where I know that saying no would be pretty easily accepted. And then over time, start to say no in, bigger situations where the no might not be so easy to accept, but, now I've said no enough times that it feels maybe a little more normal for me to do so. And kind of doing this over time, has helped build my confidence in saying no, where I feel like I can say it in situations where in the past I might not have been able to. Still have a ways to go, but I feel like I'm getting better at this.
I do struggle to say no to people. And just to clarify how I'm interpreting this question is a scenario where somebody is asking me for help or support for something, and I'm saying no, likely because I don't have capacity. I find this very challenging, and it's actually a topic I focused on a lot in therapy. I think the 2 main reasons I think it's hard. 1, I take a lot of pride in being a good friend, and I view my identity as closely connected with the strength of the relationships I build. There are some good parts about this, but certainly it's not healthy to rest my personal value on the emotions or well-being of other people. The second reason I think saying no can be hard is because I at least feel like I'm a part of a culture that's very individualistic, and it's filled with isolation and loneliness. And I think many people in my life don't feel connected enough to community or to people in their lives who can support them. The challenging part about this is when someone expresses a need or something that they're struggling with, If I can't fill that need, I often feel worried that there might not be anyone else who can. And certainly, this doesn't mean that I should just overextend myself and do it and jump in. But it's also uncomfortable to know someone's need, see someone's need, and care about someone's need, but potentially leave them on their own, especially when you know that there might not be someone else who can support them. So it's a long answer for you, Michelle, but I think honestly I could do a whole podcast episode about this topic.
Similar to probably most other people, I definitely struggle with saying no to others. I think probably also, like most people, it stems from a fear of letting them down or just not wanting to have to experience that awkwardness. At the end of the day, I think it definitely is important to communicate your needs to others. And so while it's something that I've struggled with, it's also something that I definitely have put more focus on the last couple of years, of making sure that if I really do need to step in and say no, that I can say no and also feel okay saying no. And just remembering that it's in everyone's best interest that everyone does the best they can and not overstretch.
I am a chronic people pleaser. So saying no has been something I've struggled with for a long time. And it came to the point where I had to really get hurt for me to realize that I had to start to say no and start to be really firm with my boundaries. Because a lot of the times I would say yes, or I would go out of my way in certain instances because I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want them to be disappointed by my hand, by my own doing or anything like that. So that's why I would easily be like, okay, yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, even though I may not have had the capacity or the bandwidth to do so, but I would do it anyways. And it came to a point where I ended up getting hurt multiple times, honestly. But it got to a point where I realized that I can't keep living my life like this. And I mean, honestly, it's still something I still struggle with, but I have to be aware of my own needs and my own wants, and I have to put myself first. Although that's very difficult for me to do, I had to realize that my needs matter, my voice matters, and what I require matters too. And I think even communicating that can be a bit difficult, but I think if you're coming from a place of honesty and transparency with the person that you're communicating with, if they can't understand that, then there's no reason for you to have gone out of your way to do something for them to begin with.
Saying no is something that's very difficult to do. It's definitely not something that I've found easy to do in my own life, but it's definitely something that I've worked on over the last few years and have become much better at. I think for me, at the center of not being able to say no was a desire to please people. I didn't want to be that person that disappoints people. I want to be that person where if you call me, you're in trouble, I'll come pick you up, I'll come help you, I'll help you with the money that you need. So I think at the center of it is a desire to be loved. Maybe it comes from a place where maybe there's a certain type of love that I didn't experience as a kid, and maybe I felt the need to fulfill that through being there for people. But at the same time, when you can't say no to people, it shows that you don't have boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries, that means that people are going to take advantage of you. And then that means that those friendships are less valuable because you don't have those boundaries in place. So something I started to learn was boundary setting, and that people actually respect you more when you set boundaries. Because when you don't set boundaries, people then take advantage of you. So I found that the more I started to set boundaries, the more I started to assert myself, the more people started to respect me, and the more that I would be able to help someone without feeling resentful, because sometimes I was just helping someone because it's the right thing to do, not because it was convenient for me or because it worked with my schedule. So I think with time, I've learned how to say no I usually say no first, and then if I actually want to say yes, I'll call you back and say, oh yeah, it's a yes. But sometimes just saying no first is a good way to start, and then you can actually think about what you want to do and then call that person back.
So this is a really interesting one because this goes in line or hand to hand with the previous question. I do struggle a lot to say no to people, and I think I can count the number of times I say no to people, and this was more obvious and prevalent maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I just grew up in a family like that. We just don't say no, especially to like people who are in an outer circle, which is counterintuitive. But yeah, I think I'm just from a culture that's conflict avoidant, and also we're very much community based for sure. So I've struggled a lot, and what makes it hard is disappointing or upsetting people. I know it sounds kind of small to some people probably, but that is very uncomfortable for me. And if people even show the slightest reaction of feeling any disappointment, then I immediately feel bad. How did I overcome it? I don't know if I've completely overcome it. I do have issues saying no to people who mean a lot to me today, especially like my mom or my partner, or I really think about what I say no. But what really helped me is, again, the pursuit of a healthy relationship is having the boundaries, and having a healthy boundaries, also knowing when you can and cannot do something, and just having the thought that if I'm not going to fully be present doing what I'm asked off to do, then why do it anyway if like I'm suffering to do it and the person's accepting my doing in that suffering state? That's not how I want to have that relationship anyway. So that philosophy or that thought itself definitely helped. How did I feel about communicating that expectation? It's definitely easier in a more intimate relationship, like with people, or like, you know, your partner or your parents, your siblings, your best friends, or like just people who know you. It's definitely easier. And I think once you do that more, you have set the expectation of the relationship to be that way as well. So people know what to expect of you eventually. So that's easier. With people you newly meet, I think it's easier as well. I think it's hardest for people who know you to be a certain way, and then, you know, you're kind of switching behavior. But I think it's important for that relationship to survive, for this part to be shown. I try to do it as often as I can. I could definitely do better though, honestly speaking.
I definitely have natural FOMO. So a couple of years back, I definitely found it very difficult to say no to an invitation, to go out to socialize, to go out to party, to go out to grab a drink. But as I grew older, as I got a family, you know, as I climbed the corporate ladder, time became very scarce, and it actually became impossible to always say yes. So now I've learned to say no. You know, I think having kids is the best excuse, because you can just be like, oh my God, I have to go pick up my daughter. But yeah, I've definitely gotten better at saying no to things, because I just don't have infinite time.
So saying no is something I definitely used to struggle with quite a bit, and I still struggle with certain people. And I think it's because you never want to disappoint somebody that you love, and it's just hard to think that saying no is disappointing them. But a lot of the times I've learned that saying no can be great for your relationship, because you feel like you aren't doing things just because they asked you to do them. You're doing it because you want to do them. And that's a really important part of maintaining healthy relationships. I have a really hard time communicating my needs and expectations to other people. I actually think the funny thing is I'm much better at communicating it to my husband out of anyone in my life, which is probably the most important person for me to be able to do that with, but I'm not very good at it with my friends or my family, because I don't want to seem like a burden by communicating my own needs. And it's something that as a mom, I'm really trying to overcome. And I think it's something that everyone should work on overcoming, regardless if they're a parent or not, because I have a super healthy and fulfilling relationship with my husband because we can communicate our needs to each other. And that is probably applicable to every relationship that I have.
When it comes to saying no, I think it's a very difficult thing to do. I think personally I have struggled with it. Simply, I think it comes from a place of people pleasing, number one. Number two, it's also a feeling that you have no other choice but to say yes to certain people. And I think that can be based on maybe their expectations of you. Maybe someone is always expecting you to always be there for them, or they also may have expectations to say, like, you know, you've got responsibilities and this falls under those responsibilities, so we need you to do it. And I mean, it's a very bad habit of always saying yes, because what it does, it overwhelms you. And then when it overwhelms you, you take on a load that you cannot handle. And when you do crack, people are surprised, like, no, but I asked you and you said yes. And you're like, yeah, I said yes because I felt like I had to say yes, or I said yes because, you know, it was almost impossible for me to say no in the situation given what you had said to me. And it can create a lot of confusing emotions in other people, because you've said yes and now you are lashing back, or you are unable to fulfill those things because, you know, you are overwhelmed, and rightfully so, but you said yes. So if you knew you're overwhelmed, why didn't you say no? So yeah, it's an essential skill. And I think it's also kind of self-respect for yourself, because if you want to do a good job, you can't take on everything. You need to select a few and say, hey, listen, I can do A, B, C, D, but everything else I can't do. I can't do it, maybe not today, I can do it another time, and that's fine as well. So yeah, I think that's something personally I used to struggle with. I think I still do in some aspects, but I think it's a point of me just coming to reflection and saying, okay, wait, self-reflection, and saying, wait, can I handle this? I've already got ABC on my plate. Can I do this? And then trying to negotiate with the people and say, well, listen, I know you'd asked me to do A, B, C, D, and I'm happy to do it, just not now. Can I do it at a later date? Or, you know, can we schedule this for another time? Is always also a good compromise. Because I know it's not as easy just deciding to wake up and start saying no. So yeah.
Struggling to say no. It depends. Because before I used to struggle a lot, but now it's just with certain people that I struggle to say no to, like my mom. I find it hard to say no to her when she wants something or she needs me to do something for her. But yeah, even her, I still manage to say no sometimes, because the thing is, I hate breaking promises to people. And so once I commit to doing something, I will try by all means to do it. I might be a little late to get to it, but if I said that I'm going to do something, I try to see it through. I try to be a woman of integrity, just sticking to my word. So when I commit to doing something, because that's what helps me, because at the get-go, somebody's asked me to do something and I know for sure that there's no way under the sun I would ever say yes to that, I will immediately say no. But if there is room for like, oh, maybe I'll do it later. I'm not saying I will do it later because I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to warm up to the idea of me doing this thing. I've already, by that time that I say yes, I'm already, I've already evaluated that, oh, this is something I could do. Now it's just a matter of finding the right time to do it. So I would say no. I don't think I struggle with saying no to people, because as I've grown older, when I was younger, yes, I would say I did. But as I've grown older, I'm actually learning to be a little selfish, because my time is something that I can never get back. I highly value my time. Someone could take away my purse, they could take away my phone, they could take away my car, they could take anything away from me, but I could always replace it. But when it comes to time, that's something once I give it to somebody, I'm never getting it back. So I think seriously through my yeses, because I know it'll take time for me to do whatever I'm saying yes to. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't say yes to something that I know I would never do, or just say yes to please somebody. No, I'll just be like, no, I don't think I can do that, and that's fine. I used to feel guilty, but I don't anymore. For the most part, in terms of communicating my needs and expectations, I try to do that often enough, but it's me confronting people when they do something that doesn't sit well with me. I will confront you, and I don't like repeating myself. So if I confront you about one thing and then you do it again and again and again, the thing is, I am just going to take a step back and let you, because I'm just choosing to say, well, whatever is being served here doesn't work for me. So I'm choosing to not eat at that restaurant, so to speak. So yeah, as I've gotten older, I've definitely become more clear with my expectations. I've become more reflective of things that I can or cannot do. And I am pretty blunt. I've always been kind of blunt, but I think it's gotten worse with age.
Saying no to others is not an easy task if you're a selfless person. Being a selfless person can cause you to always want to be there for people, and always want to lend a shoulder for people to cry on, lend an ear for them to talk through their issues. And sometimes that can be taxing, as mentioned in other questions. And to me, this ability was only something that I was able to overcome over the past couple of years. And the reason for that is because once you reach a certain stage in your adulthood, you need to start prioritizing things of importance that go directly into what you need as an adult and what you actually want to achieve. And time over time, it was not something that I was intentional about. I just started shifting towards that ability to say, hey, no, today is not the day that I will join you on this hike, or the day is not the day that I will join you out for dinner, because I have something that I need to get done, and I have priorities, and I've set goals, and I follow a schedule now. And I guess an important skill that I did pick up is being able to trace my day, building some fun in there, obviously, going out when I've allowed myself to go out, and following that schedule almost to the T. And once I was able to do that, I was able to start saying no to others with more ease. Now, going about communicating the no to someone you care about, for instance, may be difficult. And so to me, it was all about taking a step back and understanding what I need, first of all. And in doing so, the communication was always about trying to convey the person that I'm saying no to, unfortunately, that I need to do something for my own benefit. And then subsequently to that, I should be there for whatever they need if it's not something urgent. Doing that with that level of simplicity has made it very, very easy to communicate the no's to people you care about specifically.
I am definitely one of those people who struggle with saying no to others, and it is definitely a skill that I'm working on. In terms of how and why it's hard to say no, I think it goes back to my people-pleasing tendencies. I just want to make those around me happy. But what it comes down to is sometimes you have to do what's best for you. And so sometimes that does mean saying no to things like commitments or hangouts or things like that. So I find that one of the most helpful tools in learning to say no to things is that you just have to be confident in your no, and you also need to not feel like you need to explain your no's. So no is a complete sentence in a lot of cases, and you don't need to over explain yourself. I think that's something I'm definitely guilty of, as well as when I say no, I tend to over explain things, and that is a skill that I'm working on actively, is to be able to say no and then just end it there and not take it any further, because you have to be able to be confident in your no's and just let them stand for themselves.
I don't find it hard to say no to people. I think it's a matter of understanding what you want out of life and knowing when it's important to stand your ground. That also goes in line with communicating your needs. And especially if you have a partner, communication is super important, to be transparent and sometimes over-communicate. But also remember that saying no doesn't mean that you don't think that your partner has value in whatever they were trying to communicate on their end either.
Oi, when I say I am a recovering people pleaser, I am. So yes, it has been very difficult for me to say no to people over the years historically, but recovering people pleaser here at your service. So yes, I've worked very hard to be able to say no to things, or just like assert my needs and wants and whatnot. I find it okay when other people do, in a kind way, of course, because I acknowledge other people as worthy of expressing their own opinions and whatnot. And intellectually, I know I am worthy as well. And whenever I say no to others, I kind of think of it as more of an affirmation of like, okay, I did this act, I am worthy. And it's also helpful for me to acknowledge my own values in whatnot, in terms of the people that I want in my life, so that if I say no to someone or something or whatever, the people that will stand by me despite that, despite if I hurt their feelings or whatever it might be, are people that I want in my life.
Have I struggled to say no to others in the past? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Especially people who are in my circle, like friends, family that are like really, really close. I have a very hard time saying no to them because something in me feels like I'm letting them down. I feel like the whole point of being alive is to be there for each other and all of that. And it's just hard for me to say no. But I've learned how to say no. I'll give you an example. From a money standpoint, sometimes I get a lot of people asking me for money and all of that. So I used to just give money out, and maybe some people will borrow it and never pay back, or always some excuse, right? So what I started to do now is, if somebody asks me for money, I only give them what I can truly give them. So let's say you ask me, oh yeah, can you borrow me $300? I'll say, hey man, I can't borrow you $300, but I could give you $30, So it's just a different way to do it. But in other aspects of my life, when it comes to professional, I'm very quick to say no. I would say no so fast, you would think, you would ask if I even heard the question. So I don't know. It's so easy for me to say no when it comes to professional stuff. But when it comes to personal relationships, especially where feelings are involved and all of that, I think that becomes a negotiation. I still struggle to say a direct no, unless it's something that's totally unreasonable. How do I feel about communicating my needs and expectations to others? I have learned that you cannot have a good relationship without being able to effectively communicate your needs and wants, even the ones you feel you're embarrassed about. So I've done a lot of work on myself to acknowledge the fact that, okay, even if I'm embarrassed about this need and want, it's still a need and want of mine. And if I want a good relationship with my partner, I have to let them know. Like, I have to give them a chance to excel at that thing, or else they'll never be good enough or something like that. So I always take the time and the effort to make sure I communicate those needs and expectations. And sometimes I fall short. So I'm a work in progress.
Yo, Michelle, what is going on? You are on a roll. Anyway, so a lot of people struggle saying no. I struggled with saying no, and I think I still struggle with it. And the reason for that is because I'm a person who Um, I'm a person who needs to reflect before they give an answer. And if I do things impulsively, which I tend to do a lot. Oh yes, this was also going to be a good one for number 5. Working on impulsiveness, like doing things impulsively or saying things impulsively and not having to think about it. But anyway, it's also something that I'm working on. So yeah, I would say yes to that, struggling to say no. But then I've learned that I need to think about things before I give an answer, because usually it's very easy to say yes because you're in the moment, and then when you think about it, you're like, oh, but wait a minute, actually didn't want to do this. So I'm learning to be less impulsive, even outside of saying no or saying yes, but even with the answers that I need, that I give to other people. So so yes, so I think that also answers the question of what makes it hard to say no. I think I'm just an impulsive person, or I was trying not to be. And the easy answer is always yes. It's like literally the easiest always go to. So yeah, and what helps me overcome it is just basically stopping, not even basic because it's not easy, learning to be less impulsive over the things that I say, the answers that I give. I've learned that I'm a person that needs to think about things before I say them. Also helps in not saying things that will hurt other people. So yeah, so it's all part of therapy and all of that, and all the other sort of courses that I've taken. So yeah. And about communicating my needs to other people, and how do you feel about your needs and expectations to others? I am very good at that. I've become more comfortable around that. And I think it's also rooted in being secure in oneself, knowing that you are worthy and you are worthy of love, of being respected, of people that actually love you, giving you what you need, or giving you that security, or basically that. And so having known that, having that security, or being secure about myself, has helped me to be more vocal about or communicating my needs and my expectations. And yeah, and about whether I do this often, I mean, it would depend. And the reason I say that, it's not something that you can just randomly bring up. So it depends it depends with the conversation. Like if we're talking about those things, then yes, I would communicate that. So it depends it's dependent on the if there is a flow to talk about that, or if so yes, so I communicate it depending on whether we're on the conversation that we're having. And
Well, I think it's a matter of who's asking and what they're asking, right? So saying no to a total stranger is very easy. I don't know you, you don't know me, I owe you nothing, right? But then the closer the person is to you, the harder it becomes to say no. Particularly people who know you very well and they know which buttons to push, what to say, how to say it to you. It becomes harder to say no. So I think it's a function of how well you know the person, how much you care about the person. And for me particularly, I've learned, earlier it was harder to say no because you're still young, you're still trying to perceive life. But the other part I'd add to me being able to say no is it within my capabilities, right? Because if I generally can't do it or have no capacity to, then I'm not afraid to say no, because I just generally can't. And that's also a good measure of seeing who your true friends are, true family, right?
because if somebody approaches you with the expectation of you always saying yes, and then you tell them no, and then they react badly to it, then it's probably not somebody you want in your life, right? So I'd encourage you to just say no sometimes, just see how somebody will react. But that's besides the point. So I'd say no, it's not oddly too difficult. I evaluate it from a pragmatic sense. I'm like, how close is this person to me? What does this mean to this person? Am I able to? Because if I'm generally not able to, why would I don't feel guilty saying no because I just can't, right? And you as a person should understand. In fact, the fact that you have to ask me for me to say yes or no, you should be ready for me to say no. So I don't think it's been that of a problem, really. I think if you approach it from a pragmatic sense, and you owe nobody owes anybody anything in this world. That's just how it is, So yeah.
I actually struggle with saying no. I am actually working on it, but I feel like it just derives from not having boundaries. That is something that is needed in my life, just setting up boundaries and just learning to say no, because I feel like once I am aware of my boundaries, then that will help me better to say no to others. And another thing is just feeling bad, So I just end up saying yes, even though I truly do not want to, but I know that is not good. So one thing that I'm doing now is just learning that, I need to set my boundaries straight. And if I'm not able to help, just saying no and not saying yes. So I feel like there's that. Also, I struggle communicating my needs and expectations to others, but that is something that I'm also working on, because that is important in friendships, relationships. I feel like more in romantic relationships, I'm able to communicate my needs and expectations from the word go. But in friendships, this is something that I've struggled with, because it's like, you don't really want to lose a friend, so you don't end up really communicating your needs. But it's good to obviously be open. But with romantic relationships, I do this often from the get-go, that, okay, so here's the thing, this is what I'm not liking, or how do we work towards this? Because honestly, communication for me is key. And right now, as I'm recording this, is actually making me realize that I need to be able to continue actually putting in more effort in setting my boundaries. That'll better my communication skills, since communication is important to me.
Yes, I've struggled to say no, but again, in this chapter of my life, if I can't say no right then, yes or no right then and then, I give myself a moment of reflection before I can answer the question. But it's hard to say no because I was a former people pleaser. But to be honest, I am learning my self-love and my self-worth, so I say no gracefully. And I have grown to understand that whatever you do in this world, you are going to be a villain in someone's story. You can either do nothing. You might think you are doing nothing wrong. Some people can mark you as a villain for just actually living your truth. So I've learned that whether I live my truth or whether I don't live my truth, I'll end up being a villain in someone's story. And so that has given me that grace to say no to people when I do not feel like it. Obviously, unless you are someone I love and I can sacrifice for you. But if I don't think you deserve any kind of sacrifice for me to say no to, I'll say no with my head up high. And I have been practicing that, but I've not mastered it because I still feel the anxiety of saying no. But I believe that I've been practicing it very well, and I stand firm on it. I'll say no with a smile on my face. You know what I'm saying?
Hey guys, this one, people pleasing, can all my people pleasers gather here, because saying no, that was my kryptonite. And I was in denial for a long time. I was just like, no, everybody likes me, or I was like, no. It was for me, I think saying no to others, it was just more of me wanting to be liked, or realizing that at some point I'd feel guilty about it. So I felt like I was letting somebody down, or I could be potentially missing out on anything. But I came to realize that saying no is just giving myself a big old hug. It's setting boundaries and taking care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, who will? So once I started saying no, I discovered this magical thing called free time, and I was able to save myself some coins. I gained a whole lot of peace of mind, a lot of extra time to myself, and that's the best feeling. So I could just say no should be your best friend. And as for communicating my needs and expectations, back in the day, which was like 2023, I would say I was more of a peacekeeper than a peacemaker, which means I was an avoidant. So, like, literally when somebody would hurt me or do me wrong, I'll just let them do me wrong and I'll just exit. I'll find my way out of their lives. So I would say that I had to come to a point where I realized is that I have to be vocal about my feelings. And I mean, how else is people supposed to know what I want, right? If I'm not saying anything, I can't expect people to read my mind. So yeah, today now I'm all about open and honest communication. When I'm not busy binge watching my favorite shows, of course, I'm able to make myself available.
I think in the past I used to struggle really hard to say no to others. Part of that was because I was very shy and also a little bit of not very sociable, or just didn't know when was the time to like say no to someone. And again, through just being able to be by myself, I've learned to know when something is not right for me, or something I just don't feel like. Let's say if somebody invites me out to something and I'm not really feeling it, then I'll definitely say no, because there's no point in saying yes if I'm not really feeling it. So I've just learned to just be honest with people, because I'd rather have somebody be honest with me as well than just like lie to my face. So that has been one way that I've just usually just said no to other people. And if they really ask for a reason, then just straight up told them like, I just don't want to. So being able to do that has really like helped overall, because then I'm not having to stress about having to force myself to say yes to something that I don't want to do. So, yeah.
I have struggled with boundaries, and so I've definitely struggled with saying no to people. I think it's a mix of, culture, family, expectations, religion or spirituality, people pleasing. I think I grew up, wanting to help, but I also wanting to be loved and to be valued. And also this thing of like, the tables will turn. I think sometimes, families also blackmail you into violating your boundaries. Well, if you don't do this, one day you're going to need help. And then, so I definitely internalized that for a good chunk of my earlier life. And I think it's only, I guess, in the most recent years that I'm really learning how to say no, and comfortably so, and voicing my opinions and voicing, being able to say like, no, I'm not interested. And it made me realize like, I really do like to help people. But I think there are a lot of people around you that know sometimes that may take advantage of that. And learning to say, you know what, I would love to help, but I also need to take care of myself is something that's really, really something that I've kind of recently learned to really fully incorporate into my life. I think also, I was talking about this with a friend, that sometimes we struggle when other people are struggling. Like, we want to be problem solvers. And I am very comfortable now being able to acknowledge my limitations. I cannot save everybody, and not everyone can save me. And being able to be there for people, like, hey, I can't really help you the way that, you need, because I don't even know how to help you or whatever. But I can support you in other ways. I think that's, for me, has been a real struggle. And I kind of took it personally, like, I'm not doing enough. So being able to help in a way that is really authentic and is not about trying to prove a point, I think that's something that I've really been, finally manifesting and doing in my life in a way that's very comfortable. So yeah, having boundaries is so important. I'm really grateful that I'm in a space in my life where I can say no comfortably. But yeah, it's been a journey. Like it is still a journey, because there's sometimes when I catch myself, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it again, and I have to go back and like, yeah, listen, this is not gonna work for me. But like, yeah, it's been difficult, but I'm really grateful to learn these lessons now, and actually not just learn the lessons, but actually like actively incorporate them into my life in a way that I can finally, it is tangible. It holds water now.
Yes, saying no, it used to be very difficult for me. I realized that I was a people pleaser, and I did not think of myself as a people pleaser because I'm, fairly assertive. I'm in, law. So I thought that I was good at communicating. I was good at telling people, at critiquing. But I realized that I was not. And it's something that I had to work on. And I think when I realized that when you tell people, when you're a people pleaser, the other side of being a people pleaser, which we think is, a positive thing. Sometimes we think that's a positive thing, but it can actually be quite manipulative because you want people to like you. So you will tell them whatever they want to hear. So even if you can't deliver on something, you will say, yes, I'll deliver on this thing, or yes, I'll be part of your thing, or I will show up in X, Y, and Z ways. And so I decided I don't want to be manipulative. I want to be honest about what my capacity is. And in so doing, help myself also not take on things that I either don't want to do or cannot do because I don't have the capacity. And that made it a lot easier to tell people no. And one of the things that I've also found is, it doesn't have to be a yes or no situation. There's often a lot more wiggle room than we allow ourselves. So sometimes you can't show up to something, but maybe you can, you can't show up in person, but maybe you can log in on Zoom, or, maybe you can't give money, but you can give time. Maybe you can't provide a solution, but you can provide an ear, or you can provide advice. Those are all kinds of, middle grounds that you can take, and being able to say to people, hey, I can't do this, but is this okay? And also sometimes just being able to say no. I think we are often afraid of what a no will mean. And that's something I've also come to realize with age and experience and all the things, is just that the worst case scenario, think about the worst case scenario, like and usually it's not that bad. Usually it's something that you will survive and you'll be okay. If it's someone being upset with you, so what? They'll be okay. If it's someone being disappointed, or if it's an opportunity that you think, I have to take this right now, else it'll never come back again. Usually we catastrophize and we think the absolute worst. Most often that's not the case. So that's kind of how I've started saying no more.
Yes, I find it very hard to say no to people. I mean, it's hard, right? Like, I think also it depends on who you're saying no to. For me, it's often relatives that are very close, or like friends that are really close that I don't want to disappoint. I think, it's hard to, like, if you think about it, the human brain is wired to please people because we are social creatures, right? So because we are social creatures, I personally struggle with that. But I think, what I've learned over the years is if I understand why someone is doing what they're trying to do, like really like figure out like what is the driver of this request, right? Like what's the goal behind it, right? Like it helps me rationalize my yes or no's. And I think it also helps me think through, think through what I need to say to them. Because I also think, like, to your point about how do you communicate it to others, I think it's if you figure out why they want something from you, it will be easier. And why you cannot help them, I think it would be easier to say no. The communication is easy. I mean, it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier. Is there a silver bullet to it? I'm absolutely not aware of anything. I think you just have to learn. Because other thing I think as well is as you become an adult and you have like, get married and all that stuff. I think it becomes clearer that you need to prioritize. And that's why I'm like, you learn very quickly, whether or not you like it, you learn very quickly to put your boundaries in place.
So I'm one person who used to really struggle with saying no to people and not being available for people's events or people's functions, or just not being there when people ask me to be there. But it's not every time when you're available for each and everything. It's not every time when you've got a solution to people's problems. But I used to take that burden and make it mine and make sure that I need to solve ABCD's issues. I need to be there for this person because they need me and everything. Yes, they might need you. Yes, they might need help with certain things, but it's not every time when you're able to help. And it's not a sin, it's not a bad thing to say I can't. It's not a bad thing to say I don't know. And it's not a bad thing to say you're not available. So I really used to struggle with that a lot, especially like 5 years ago. I think I used to really, really struggle, and I used to be that person who always wanted to be a sweetheart for every person. I figured out along the way that I was training myself, and I had a lot of bitterness because that also comes with a lot of expectations. Or let me speak for myself. I would expect those people to do the same for me, to move mountains for me and to be always available. But people would not turn up and people would not be available. People would probably ignore my calls. And I was thinking, okay, fine, but every time they're trying to call me, I always pick up. No matter how busy I am, no matter how tired I am, I always show up. But then I learned that I needed to also prioritize myself. And when I cannot do something, I cannot. When I'm in a tight situation, I will respond later. When I do not feel like responding, I will not respond. So when it comes to communicating my needs and expectations to others, I really struggle. I'm still struggling with that area because I just feel like I give out so much and I do not receive the same energy from people. So I then struggle with communicating my expectations and probably some things that I'll be needing at that time. So I feel like sometimes it's just best for me to just do my things by myself and to just, have very, very minimum expectations from people, because I often get disappointed and then I feel like these people are fake, So I really try not to have like high expectations, or rather expect a lot from a lot of people. I'm still struggling with communicating my needs. I just feel like it's best if I just do my things by myself, and if I really, really, really need help, I turn to people that are very, very close to me, like siblings and my spouse and just like very, very close people, because I feel like the moment I try to involve other people and they're not in the space to give me the amount of attention that I need, or to provide information that I need, or to just be there, I often find it difficult to get people to be there for me. But all the same, I really try to communicate my needs, and I really try to communicate my expectations, but I don't fully put it out there.
Well, yes, I used to struggle. Honestly, I used to struggle to say no to other people because I always felt like when someone comes to me for assistance or whatever it may be, I'm the best person to help out in that situation. So I used to give an hand where possible. But lately, yes, I have overcome the struggle because not everybody feels the same way you do. So if you feel like you're just helping out someone because they are in need, when I was in need, certain situations, those same people, you can literally see them backing away. I feel people should communicate their needs and expectations with other people more often so that people don't cross boundaries and know where they stand and not assume certain roles or positions in people's places.
I used to struggle to say no quite a bit until I started checking in with my values to see if what I'm trying to do also aligns with the things that bring me joy. That made it really easy for me to start saying no to certain things, but being okay with maybe saying yes or bending my boundaries for things that fill me up with joy.
A lot of people struggle to say no to others. Is this something that you've struggled with? Yes, unfortunately, yes. It is hard, as I am a people person who loves to help others. So sometimes it's hard to say no when somebody's in need, even though I might be busy or have other things to do. But also sometimes I do not like confrontation. This is something I want to overcome, as my goal is to work on speaking my mind and putting myself first in any situations, regardless of who it is I'm dealing with.
I think the relationships that have felt easiest to say no in or to communicate my expectation in are the longer and high stakes relationships. So, for example, my relationship with my parents, right, where there's the safety of knowing that we may have disagreements, but they're always going to be my parents. That's not a biological relationship that can be severed. It's a friendship that can be altered, but at the end of the day, like, the more permanent relationship will kind of force us to come to grips with, the conflict that we're facing. At least that's been my experience. And then, my relationship with my coworkers, there's less safety there, but it is a high stakes relationship in the sense that I'm going to be with my coworkers for 40 plus hours a week. And so if I don't make sure that we're communicating and we're talking well and, having our needs met, then, living with the consequences of things not being okay is going to be daily. But at the same time, it's less of a personal relationship. And so, if my coworker thinks that the sky is purple, right? It's not so personal. Like, I can have them live in a world where the sky is purple, and not from some, obvious biological condition that they have, but just, they have decided that the sky is purple. Anyways, so that is a thing that I can live with. Whereas if my parents think that donating to charities is a waste of money, like, every time I donate to charities, I'm going to hear something about it. And so that's a relationship in which I need to communicate my values. I need to communicate my expectations in terms of how opinions are expressed and a certain level of respect. Okay, parents are probably not the best example for communicating that. That's probably a more peer-to-peer type of conversation. But yeah, in essence, like, the closer the relationship, the higher stakes it is, I think the easier it is to communicate expectations and a no. And it's just thinking about what the stakes are if I keep my mouth closed. Like, I can live with a non-personal relationship that has differing opinions, but the moment that we're sharing intimate space with one another in terms of, like, our thoughts, our ideas, how those thoughts and ideas then influence our actions,
then yeah, like it's more important, in my opinion, to be able to express what I'm thinking and what I expect.
Do I struggle with saying no to others? Absolutely not. It used to be a problem over a decade ago, and I think that was because of cultural influences. So, where I come from, people really struggle to say no. And in fact, they won't say no if you ask them something. They'll just beat around the bush and say a whole lot of things that will make you conclude that their answer is probably no. And I think also, probably culturally, even if someone says like a whole lot of things, because it's indirect, people can still manage to, I guess, convince someone to do something. But that changed when I came to the US and I was given the freedom to say no. That was actually something, I think we probably had someone who told us more about like the American culture, and they were like, you should be very direct. And if you don't want to do something, you can just say no. And it has been so liberating. Like just learning that from, I guess, I don't know, 19 or whatever age I was at. It's been so liberating, and I've been able to say no to a lot of things. I think that my career also got me to say no a lot. So as part of progressing in my career, I had to take board exams. And with board exams, it was a lot of studying, like, I don't know, over 400 hours of studying per exam. And so every time that I was studying, if friends were to ask me to do things like, let's go for dinner, or let's go out, or let's do this, let's do that, I would always say no. Like it was like my default. I'd just say no, because at that time, the thing I needed to prioritize was studying for the exam. And I just felt like doing all these other things was just distracting me, and I needed to get my exams done so that I could start living life. So I think I got to practice saying no a lot at that time. Something I will also add is, I think having this podcast has also been amazing, because when I am recording an episode, I just think up who I could invite to do an episode with me. And I've received a lot of no's. And I actually really like it, because when I ask people to do an episode, I really want them to feel free to tell me whether they would like to do it or not, so that if they say yes, it's a wholehearted yes, and if they say no, it's like a wholehearted no. So I think it's just also been nice to give people that freedom. And like sometimes I'll even like ask people like, hey, if you feel comfortable, we can do it, but if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to do it. In addition to that, when we do the episodes, I usually send people questions before so that they can take a look at them, and then I'll give them the freedom to be like, okay, if you want to do it, like the question's okay. If you want to do it again, if some questions are not okay or you want to rephrase them, feel free to edit them. So it's just been nice, because I am able to say no a lot. It's been nice to give others the same freedom to say no. And so, yeah, I think that's that on saying no. And then the other thing was about communicating needs and expectations. I think I'm okay on that. I just feel like there's some people who are worth communicating expectations and needs to. And then there's some people who are just not worth communicating, those things too. So it just really depends. And sometimes I end up just communicating my expectations or like my needs after something has been breached. And I'm like, oh, okay, this person actually didn't know this about me. And so now is my chance to tell them. And then from there, if, the expectations or needs are not met, then I can readjust the, friendship or relationship or whatever it is. So that's my answer right there.